everybody, and welcome back to Nubeva's channel. We're sitting here once again with Randy, and we're going to want his insight and wisdom on a couple article pieces here. But first off, Randy, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Of course. Glad to have you back. So getting into this topic here. So like they're talking like half of Q1's malware traffic is in TLS encryption, which is where people can't see it and can't reach it, which really shines a light on what Nubeva is doing. Can you really just shine some light on this for everybody?
Yes. So let me give you a slightly longer version on the context of this. So when I was in college a long time ago, everything was unencrypted. And I had friends that would telnet into other machines to log into the machines to do what they wanted. Oh. And one day I was looking at the network and I said, wait a minute, I just saw your password fly through. And they go, yeah, of course, it's unencrypted. Because, well, what prevents me from logging in with your password? And he goes, well, nobody ever does that. And I go, what? That makes no sense, right? Obviously, fast forward for how many years from then, 10, 20 years from then, I went to school a long time ago, everything got encrypted. Yeah. So then the next question then becomes, when hackers hack in, they want to steal your data or ransomware or put in things or just control things so you don't see what they're doing. It used to be that everything was unencrypted because they're a hacker. Why would they go through the effort of encrypting that? Well, they're going to encrypt that so you don't see what they're doing, so you don't know they're a hacker. Yeah. And so it's just amazing that it took as long as it's taking for hackers to now use encryption. So if you look at that report, it's about it's saying that it's doubled year after year, and now it's about 50% of the hackers using encryption to do what they do. And I just thought about that. This is no different than when I was in college. Because wait a minute, why is it not 100%? Right? Encryption is trivial. But that tells you it's really a very obvious thing, right? So the way TLS is working nowadays, you really can't man in the middle. We talked about this a few sessions back. You can't really put yourself in between and see what's getting encrypted because it's TLS encrypted. And so by definition, if it's a hacker trying to remote control what's going on, put in the ransomware or do whatever, well, they're gonna want to do that in an encrypted channel, so nobody can go and find out what they're doing until much later when they prefer that's what happens, right? So obviously there's that study talking about it. There's quite a few examples that are very high profile. So a few months back, we had a SolarWinds attack where somebody went through essentially a supply chain. They went in and changed the source code or the build system of SolarWinds to add in a hacker, right? A hack into it, a malware into it. And using that malware, they were able to then infiltrate different machines that were very, very critical infrastructure for a lot of government agencies and very, very important entities. So what was not covered probably as much is obviously that malware used encryption to essentially phone home so somebody could go in and log in and say, okay, let's just go do this or do that, et cetera, et cetera. What's fascinating about that encryption is typically when we do TLS, when we go to a bank or Amazon, the TLS encryption, the server certificate validates where I'm going. And so in other words, if I think I'm going to Amazon, the encryption certificate will say, you are indeed going to Amazon. Well, this hacker's TLS encryption did not check for anything. So in other words, he's just trying to connect to whatever he could. So the other end had one of his entities try to connect to whatever he could. It was literally 30 or 40 different possibilities of connections. And they would just come in through it, but they never bothered to validate whether that encryption is valid. Huh. And so this is a little bit of a joke that I used to have with my college, talking about college, reminiscing about college. I had some friends that, went through college what we would consider the healthy way, and that met people and they dated, et cetera. And I had friends that literally would say, okay, let's go to the bar and I'll date whoever dates me today. Right, kind of a thing. And I, as a father of daughters, that would be a huge red flag. Wait, what? No, so this encrypted channel is essentially connecting to whatever it can to allow connections and remote control through that encrypted channel. So think about that. That should have been a massive red flag. Yeah. So we never connect to. We want to validate who we're connecting. Is it the bank that I'm going to? Is it Amazon that I'm going to, et cetera, et cetera. In this particular case, the malware connected to whatever it could. There's no validation whatsoever. And that should have been caught. And this is a lot to do with some of the things that we do, right? We get you the keys of anything that connect, whether it's malware or valid, and you can go in and see what it's doing. Well, in this particular case, it's not hard to detect that there is malware because this connection, first of all, forget about what the connection inside it is doing. The fact that it's trying to connect to whatever will connect to it and allow somebody to control it should tell you, wait, that's a huge red flag. You should never have any encrypted connection that will not bother validating the other.
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot of sense.
so that would be, I think I'm glad that there's a lot more visibility in articles talking about how much malware is using encrypted channels. But I think this is still just the tip of the iceberg. If you just use logic and use your imagination of how this can go, I mean, there's got to be people who use encryption, the people who detect, wait a minute, this connection is encrypted, let's not allow that. They're going to say, well, let's encrypt this channel to something that looks like it should be allowed. So maybe they instead of proxying back to their home, they'll go through some middle entity that seems valid, right? Go through YouTube or some other proxy to then say, okay, we'll connect to that, and then that other entity connects to that, and they'll hack into that.
Randy, I think you're giving them ideas at this point.
No, I mean, this is maybe I did. What when I was in college, I think it seems obvious though. I mean, when back then when everything is unencrypted, I see a password. It's an obvious thing that I'm just gonna grab this password to do. I'm not gonna do it, but isn't that obvious that somebody will do something about it?
That's true.
So this is quite obvious, right? You don't really have to be in cybersecurity or be technical. Like a 12-year-old kid sitting on a sofa could, if you're thinking about, what are the things I could do to not maybe, what movie did I recently see and what do they do?
Yeah, right? Good point. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a cat and mouse game for sure. Right. And when they're doing that kind of shotgun method, trying to reach whatever, they're kind of showing the flaw in at least somebody's security, right? And not everybody's up to speed, unfortunately. Right. And it's definitely now it's like, okay, well, now we've been burned X amount of times and it continues to happen. Maybe now we should actually pay attention to it. Kind of like the whole, well, too little, too late, but I mean, better late than never. So
right. So it's actually better to find out. Every time we see one of these malwares that do tremendous damage, you can just imagine how much more damage you could have actually created, right?
Yeah, true.
So there's the benefit of at least, okay, now we know that this can't be done, and then let's sit down and think about what are the obvious next steps that somebody would do, and let's hopefully protect against that too. So,
true. Yeah, good point. That's definitely vision, man.
I mean, I'm a huge fan, obviously, of people bringing this to the attention and saying, malware is going to use encrypted channels. So I don't think anybody, when they see that article, some of the numbers may be surprising, but the topic, it cannot possibly be surprising. Malware and hackers using encrypted channels, of course, right?
Yep. It seemed like it was a logical next step for them, and hopefully we can just keep up with what they're doing. Apparently, you're ahead of the game. You're ready for them to do something else too. So, Randy, thank you for coming on. Thanks for your insight on this. And if anyone has any questions, send them over. We'll dive into those as well. Randy, have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.